Yeah, that's possible. Are you recording locally right now?
Yes, yes, just started.
Okay.
Cool.
I just want to double check to make sure that we aren't actually streaming live or that isn't broken in some way.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds
Do you
good.
want
Yeah,
to run it?
yeah. Let me start. So yeah, welcome everyone. This is the Open RFC weekly call. We're running here at NPM. Uh, so basically, I think everyone who's in today has been here already. So maybe no need to run the introductions one by one. But I'd like to mention that this call is under a code of conduct. So any interactions here is covered by that. So we ask you to please respect it. And yes, and the intentions and desired outcomes of this call is definitely to interact with the community, have the space to gather feedback and follow up in any RFC that we have open. Make sure we follow along with what's going on there. Yeah, so before we start, I guess we have the announcements here. And I know the team has a big one for this week. I don't know if anyone else wants to start before that.
Sure. I can say something to that. So our
Yes.
first beta of npm v7 is out and live. You should install it. You should be aware that some stuff might still be a little bit unstable. This is our first kind of beta, not actually the first beta release, but it's the first beta release that we're making any kind of noise about. You can kind of gather that from the beta.4 pre-release tag on it. To get it, run npm install -g npm at next-7, and that tag will keep getting updated as we release new betas. So if stuff is broken, it might get fixed pretty soon. One thing that's kind of nice here, there's a lot in the blog post, but one thing worth noting is that the update notifier will now check daily if you're on a pre-release version of npm, and then fall back to weekly if you're, once the beta tag drops. So any of our beta testers will be able to kind of keep you up to date a little bit more quickly, and hopefully that'll reduce the number of duplicate bug reports we get for stuff that we just fixed. New versions are going out. I mean, this is the first one went out, I think, last week, and we're on number 4 now. So it'll be pretty fast and furious. In the last couple working days, we've had about 1 per day.
Nice. Okay. Anything else in terms of announcement? Otherwise, I should probably ask someone for notes, note taking.
Yep, I can help with that. And/or Claudia, if you want to keep doing that, I can do it too now that I'm not running.
You can do it today.
Awesome.
Great. Yeah. So yeah, we can move on with the agenda we have here today. And I see that the first item here is from Miles. The npm run series, run parallel RFC. I think it's for now it's just an issue, right? Our RFC. But maybe if you want to speak up to that, Miles.
Yeah, I mean, like, this was just more like an idea that came up when I was messing around with, I actually used cat and xargs to like stream together a whole bunch of different commands into like series. And for testing pipelines or build pipelines, it's very reasonable like that you may be having a separate script for building CSS versus building JS versus HTML, and like a different series of ones for production versus development. We've seen tools such as Webpack or Gulp or Grunt be used for this, but kind of depending on the complexity of what you're doing and how you're tying together different tools, sometimes you really don't need a meta tool. If like all you want to do for testing, for example, is like run ESLint and then run tap, you end up having to write like npm run npm run lint and then npm run tap, and then have 2 separate scripts for that. you know, for two things, it's not a big deal, but when it can start to kind of get out of control as you have more than one. I saw some feedback on it that, you know, like series might be easy to do, but parallel gets a little bit more complicated, especially if you have like interleaving logs. So I could see potentially even splitting this into two separate proposals. I think there was also some feedback about like whether, you know, this should be an argument to run or a new command, and just kind of like what would be the best syntax for this. And to be, you know, blunt, I don't really have too much opinion about like the implementation of this. I'm more just kind of pointing out a pattern that is useful. Another thing that becomes like a little more complicated, and I can bring up some examples, is like, depending on how you want to run things, like if in the case of like testing, well, I may want to run both my linter and my test suite independent on whether or not one passes and one fails, and may just want to have the output of both at the end. Right now, the and approach causes it to hard bail. There are ways that you can do this, but it ends up becoming extremely platform and POSIX specific. I've done some weird stuff where like you save the state of them, you like pipe it into an environment variable and then check that. Like, it's gross. It works, but it's not like fun. So I think that there's a lot of design space here as far as like figuring out like the scope of what we want to solve. But at least to myself, this is something that I've used and implemented many, many different ways, and they end up becoming platform specific. So I think if this is something NPM can support, it would be great.
Yeah, so I just want to say, if what you're doing is two things, I mean, just to highlight here, like if what you're doing is two things, and you would be doing like, and you set your test script to like npm run tap and npm run lint, right? Well, you can just set your test script to tap and your post test script to ESLint. And that's effectively that. But like, yeah, when if you have 5 things that you want to chain together, then it starts to get more convoluted. The thing that I have, the kind of like, just to play devil's advocate a little bit and press on this, what I sort of don't want to do is get to a point where we've like re-implemented Make, right? Make is great. I love Make, and I think more people should use it. Like, especially if you want to have like, oh, you know, my build web only has to redo, like I only want to build the CSS files that have changed, and build web only has to be run if one of these 5 things has been done. And so I have like these 4 that can run in parallel and this one that has to kind of wait for them all. Like, there's tools for that, and they're great, and they're hard to get right. You know, I don't know how many decades have gone into making Make good at
People
that.
question about Make. Does it run on Windows?
Nope.
Is it like cross-platform?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, there may be a WSL. I'm pretty sure WSL has Make. But I mean, if you're just running in like sort of a stock Windows, then no, there's no Make implementation for that.
Right. Sorry, I saw that Jordan had his hand raised before.
Yeah. So like in general, I think cross-platform ways to do things is important. I think I have a number of projects where Windows users have said that they have trouble, and I've had to make fixes because I just didn't realize it didn't work on Windows, or no Windows user had ever tried it. And for the series approach, when there are explicit script names, I think that seems straightforward to me and would solve a lot of those issues that Miles mentioned. And, you know, as like Isaac mentioned Make, but like if Make was sufficient for Node, then it kind of feels like npm run shouldn't have been added ever. And like, but because Make doesn't work on Windows, it's not sufficient for Node. So like on non-WSL Windows, obviously. But then the concerns I have, which Miles referenced, were, so for the parallel one, it's interleaving output and making sure that exit codes propagate correctly. I've tried all of the tools that I'm aware of for running tasks in parallel and arbitrary tasks in parallel. And as far as I can tell, they all are brittle in various ways and do not do that correctly. So if that's something NPM could solve, that would be glorious, because then there would be one working tool for that purpose. The other kind of question it raises with both of those is globs and patterns. So there's like npm run all or something. People want to be able to do like run all my test star, or they have some convention around colon usage or whatever. And it would be, I think, very tricky to allow to bring in some sort of conventions to an existing run script ecosystem. But it would also make a bunch of people upset, I think, if we didn't do anything like that. So that's kind of a minefield around either of these features as well. But so I think splitting them makes sense. I would like to see them both eventually land. And as much as, and I just, unfortunately, I just don't think Make is really, like, I think Make needs to be somewhat reinvented since Make doesn't work on all of Node's operating systems.
Yeah, I definitely see the value in having it being a built-in NPM thing. I've used NPM run all a lot, I think. And so I definitely see the use case. And I think we should provide it definitely has value in providing a built-in solution that runs in the cross-platform.
And the other point, sorry, that I forgot to mention was I use pre and post scripts extensively in all of my projects.
Yeah.
And I do that partially because for like usability, because then when I'm typing the command, I don't run the risk of forgetting the precondition or the postcondition, but also because then it works easier for Windows users and kind of it avoids needing to have a bunch of ampersand chains in my scripts. But that gets really, really bloated in package JSON. And I could probably collapse, 30 lines of scripts into like 12 or less if I had either one of these tools available.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you get into things where it's like, when I run version, I want to run test before as my pre-version script, and then I have a post-test script, and then I post-version script that runs npm publish, and a pre-publish script that pushes it to get. Like, you end up with this kind of weird like tree of scripts that are going to get run in like a depth first traversal order, when what you really want is just a series of like, when I do this command, do these 5 things, right?
Exactly.
Cool. I see Wes has something great.
Yeah, I think this is a minefield, so I will just say that. I think we already have a lot of problems with the like nested doll approach to npm scripts, where we have like npm run foo runs npm run bar and npm run, and it just goes on. And I've seen much worse cases of this in applications than I've seen in libraries. So I think, if we make it more powerful, we run the risk of folks doing even wilder things with it. And I'm not sure that's a good thing. That said, we have an internal tool that uses a re-implementation of tmux in JavaScript to do a user experience around running things in parallel. That's actually really nice. I'm not saying the implementation is great, but the user experience is pretty nice. You end up running this one command, it pops open a tmux session, but it is fully re-implemented in JavaScript, so it is cross-platform. And then you just get the log output next to each other, or however, your thing wants to run it. And I'm pretty sure that is building on top of some npm run scripts. So if we wanted to go some route like that, doing some sort of session, like a tmux session for the non-interleaving log problem, actually is a pretty good user experience. That's all I want to say. That said, I really think folks go way too far, and they should have just probably moved it into a scripts directory and not been doing all this sort of weird chaining of npm scripts. So I would rather see a support for a cross-platform script directory that npm respects, where you could say npm run foo, and it would actually see if there's a script in package JSON, and if not, then check a known file location for it, and then let people go wild in there. Then and that could then have all the parallel stuff just implemented as some sort of cross-platform bash type syntax. instead, because I think that putting it all in JSON is just super painful, and I've seen a lot of bugs because of it. So
Yeah, not to mention like quoting and other weird stuff.
oh
I mean,
yeah,
it's
that
like
stuff just gets
Although I actually like the constraints of JSON. I don't want logic in my scripts if I can avoid it. But you know,
Right.
everyone has varying opinions about these things.
but that's
I mean,
but that's not true. You just said you want logic, right? You want, if this one fails, sometimes I might run these other and let them complete, but sometimes I want to bail out. Like, I mean, that is logic. Whether it's simple logic
Yeah.
that represents well in Bash, or sorry, in JSON or not, is what you're saying. But you do want
Yeah.
some logic.
Yeah, that's fair. I want a very constrained set of logic, so it's a simpler set of rules to think about when trying to understand the scripts. You're totally right.
Which we could do in a opinionated way that doesn't necessarily rely on JSON being the constraining factor.
what if you know, what if we just kind of throwing out a weird idea? What if we looked for like a something like a Travis or GitHub Actions, like, you know, workflow YAML file, and had a way to like run all the things in there? Because that has, like, there are patterns already for, you know, should this fail fast? What, you know, what commands need to be run? Like, which ones need to depend on which other ones? I mean, you want to talk about like re-implementing make? I mean, effectively, that's what CI has done. It's re-implemented make, complete with dependencies and configurable parallelization and everything else. I would
If
be
we go
much
this route, there are clearly solved things that have solved these problems that
Right.
we should look at.
Right. I mean, the challenge is, like, you know, one of the big things that's in every CI system is a matrix of operating systems and versions. And like NPM is not going to do that. I'm not going to ship an implementation of Windows with for you to run your NPM test on. And probably even different Node versions would be too like a bridge too far. But a way to say, like, here's a bunch of like commands, I don't know, like YAML and some kind of like existing DSL for describing the dependencies would start to make a lot more sense, because JSON is very limited. Like, and that's kind of the point of JSON, right? Like you don't, it should be nudging you towards writing your script somewhere else.
Sure. Okay, so for the sake of moving forward in the agenda here, let's time box the discussion. But yeah, I think we should definitely follow up in the RFC or in the it's just an issue now, or maybe getting someone making it into a real RFC if there is interest. But I saw a couple of comments in different directions. It'd be nice if Isaac West, you can document that in that issue there.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, moving forward, next item here in the agenda is going to be the add ability to skip scripts hooks. Oh, okay, this is from Lucas, but I don't think he joined today.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is great though, and personally, and it's like the implementation is almost no amount of work. The thing that is kind of interesting in this, somebody did bring up in the issue that it's a little bit weird to have npm test -- ignore scripts still run the test script, but not run the pre and post script. I mean, to me, that kind of makes the most sense, but who was that? That was Askermas. But I don't know. I think it's like calling it hooks when we have something else already called hook. Like that gets more, that almost is like more hairy to me.
I feel like it does make sense not to run it. Like if you're, I feel like that's what the flag's for.
Right. So right now, you know, in V6, if you run npm test -- ignore scripts, it just doesn't run your test, which I think is
That
a
doesn't make
terrible
sense.
experience. And in NPM 7, well, we went all the way to the other side of the spectrum. If you run npm test -- ignore scripts, it just runs everything anyway, along with pre and post. So those are like the two worst options. I feel like the middle way suggested by this RFC is actually pretty good.
Cool. Yeah, if no one else has any comments, maybe follow up in the RFC, but it's looking good, right?
I mean, I see no reason not to just like
Ratify it and
ratify it
implement
and ship it in the next beta. Like
Yeah.
it's almost no work, and
Yeah,
I don't see much
it's
downside
a
of it.
really big problem. I have 300 packages with a tests-only script, specifically so that in CI I don't have to run my linter on every matrix build, because npm test ignore scripts does nothing, which I learned the hard way when my tests were passing mysteriously for a month.
Oh, they're all very quietly passing.
I know.
Oh,
And
so
very
weird.
quickly.
Yeah, I must be a great programmer.
And I mean, even though npm 6 is kind of so the only option or another alternative though might be a new option that's not called not spelled ignore scripts, because it would be really nice to ship that in npm 6, even though you probably aren't going to want to do anything in npm 6. Just throwing it out there.
I think calling it ignore scripts makes the most sense, because what ignore scripts means, like in like semantically, like what is the spirit of that config flag? What it means is do the thing I'm telling you to do, but don't do all the other extra junk, right? And if you run npm test, like the thing I'm telling you to do is to run the test script, and don't do the extra junk means don't do the pre and post.
Yeah, that's fair. I just would really like to be able to use this feature sooner than npm 7 is going to be ready. And
I would like to never touch npm 6 again.
Understood.
Yeah, we will have a few little very, very small fixes that are going out here pretty soon, but yeah, I think something like we should really just sort of treat that as like npm 6 is what it is, and adding new features is probably not going to happen.
Wait, did you have to step out for a sec?
I'm good. Just a little intrusion here, but all good. But yeah, it's looking good to ratify, right? So let's call it ratified. We can merge a PR and ship it in the next beta release.
Yep.
Cool. All right, so let's move on to the next one. We have the one from you, Isaac, bringing back a subset of npm package variables.
Yeah. This came out of a conversation in on Twitter with a couple of folks, and really, like, this is in the current beta that we just shipped. But really, the only question is, like, are there others that should be added, or is this enough? So effectively what this adds is name, version, config with the whole nested underscore object thing, engines, bin with the whole nested underscore object thing. And I think that's it. Because those are the ones that I was able to find some reference of people using them. And you know, you probably don't need the whole array of contributors or, you know, other like random stuff like scripts and whatnot. But at this point, like, the code is there. It's relatively easy to add new ones if people do find other scripts or other environment variables that they run into and that they are sad are missing. But I think the thing that makes sense is to just sort of move forward with this. It seems like a pretty good middle ground.
Yeah, and for anything that is package JSON, you do have a fallback like track of we now have the npm package JSON variable, right? That people can use to read the actual package JSON.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's not going to work. That adds a little bit of complexity because you have to write a program in JavaScript that reads the file and JSON parses it or whatever. If you're doing something like, you know, just using the version to like update all your docs or something like that, and you just want to kind of get the environment variable and spit it out somewhere else, parsing the JSON is a little bit tedious.
Can I ask, like, I understand that people use this, but where's the line? Because, like, it seems to me like adding a Node-C standard in JSON parse or whatever is, like, not a very large ask for the simplicity that it brings to just remove basically all of them, which was, I thought, a good original decision.
Yeah,
Like,
it actually ends up being about the same number of characters as $npm underscore package underscore whatever. I think, go ahead.
Yeah, I think these are already covered because we've talked about it on GitHub, but the things that I think are important to not have to read package.json for are, if I'm running npm version, it should be apparent in the environment what version I'm going from and to.
So that actually already is covered in the
right.
npm version command. Like there are some additional environment variables that are not, you don't have to pull out a package.
Right, but I'm that's an example that I'm providing of like where information that is contextually directly relevant to the command being run should be provided. But everything else, like you could argue the package name maybe, but like really you could read package.json for that stuff. It's just that like in the version case, one of those two versions is ephemeral. And so whether you're in pre-version, version, or post-version, one of them is in package.json and the other one isn't. So they both, for clarity, they kind of both need to be in the environment. And then there's probably similar things around, I don't know, like if you're in publish, maybe you want to know if it's a dry run or not. And in general terms, right, there's the in publish package. So like tools need to be able to know if they're running in publish or in install, or like which lifecycle hook they're running in. But like, again, that's all contextual stuff. It's not anything else. I think is totally reasonable to ask people to just read out of the file system.
Yeah, all of those things are covered actually better in npm 7 and more reliably than in npm 6. But yeah, I think Jess Telford had brought up a few in that thread. Like, what did he ask for? Name, main, config, a couple of others. Nobody ever, my pushback was like, nobody needs npm underscore package underscore contributors underscore 43 underscore email, right? Like it's ludicrous. And it actually, for large packages and large apps, like we've seen this in some of our internal apps at npm, like running the scripts on some systems will actually blow up the environment and cause the script to fail. Because it's like trying to dump too much stuff, and that machine had a really low U limit for environment size, and a ton of configs and stuff. So it just gets pretty onerous. But yeah, I think as far as like where's the line, I mean, we're kind of finding where that line is. I think it's these 5 or 6 fields.
So I think Jordan made this point a little bit, but like one of his examples in the Twitter thread was doing this like debug script with node inspect break package main. But like what happens when we start doing things with all the exports, right? Like, and conditionals and all that, like that seems like that's going to blow up at some point if we wanted to actually support them, where if we just say we explicitly don't, and if you want that, you need to implement it yourself by reading the package JSON like that. Like, and so if I'm looking down this list, that's like the most common example here is I think using package main, and that already has like a pretty clear problem in the future, I think. Yeah,
so the exports is probably not going to work, and probably wouldn't even in npm 6 because it starts with a dot, right? Like, and that's gonna cause the keys to start with an underscore, which then the old npm lifecycle will say, oh, this is a private value. This is a private config value. I should not be putting it in the environment. So that already, like, we don't really have to worry about the future so much in terms of the slippery slope angle. This is more about not breaking existing apps because I want more people to use npm 7, so I can stop supporting npm 6. So there is there is a product management compromise being made here, which is sometimes at odds with like, you know, perfect engineering elegance.
You will never hear me argue against that. So I get it. Pragmatism is good.
All right. Well, I'm gonna like we should probably call this ratified because we already shipped it.
Yeah, sounds good. You should
All right.
probably formalize it. Cool. Yeah, so let me follow up with the agenda here. Next item is the audit license from Tierney. I know he's not in the Zoom call today, but do we had any resolution on that last week? Maybe Darcy, you've been following this one closely, the NPM audit license.
Let me double check the RFC.
We can always come back to this next week. There's no.
Yeah, I mean, haven't had time to look this over, or give any. I don't know what the meeting had said from last week, or from oh my goodness, two.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Right?
Yeah, it was.
You know, a little while since we got together. That's right.
Yeah.
Probably just have to follow up, and I can ping Tierney again to
Sure.
see what the next steps are.
Sounds good. Yeah. So the next item here is the parent package JSON from Chrissy.
So yeah, after we spoke about this at the last meeting 3 weeks ago, actually, I was very much convinced that we actually resolved this during NPM pack and the RFC accordingly. And to me, what only kind of remains is like open questions a bit, like what you would inherit, because like it's like I think it's more of a problem that's kind of being amplified in workspaces environments. So I think it's to personas, like you have a developer who's installing a package and the developer doesn't even know that the package is a parent. However, if you develop the package locally, of course, you want to know as the package author that there is a parent, and you need, I think you do need a mean to see like that, for example, if you run npm list, like where the script is coming from or where the package dependencies are coming from, if they are coming from the parent or if they are defined in the child. So to me, basically so it's, I don't know, it kind of more evolved into support for like development environment, I would say, if that's appropriate. And I think one of the things I kind of came up with, which would be problematic, would be if you inherit from a parent and you also have that parent as a def dependency, for example, like how would you update this? This would probably get messy very, very fast. So I think those are kind of the things that should just be prohibited altogether.
I'm not sure why it would be why it would be tricky to have the parent package be a dependency or dev dependency.
For example, if you run npm update, you would do it with like npm update and then like the package name, or like even npm outdated as well. And then like, how would you say, I want to update my dev dependency and not my parent, for example?
Well, so if the parent designator is some npm specifier, right? So it's some named specifier like foo at latest or foo at 123 or whatever. Let's say that when we publish, we flatten that. So at publish time, we fetch that spec, we get the manifest, we do the merge, and we say, okay, this is the package that's actually getting published. But we leave your dev environment alone. If you have it as a dev dependency, like that's fine. You're just updating a file you're updating files in your node modules folder. Your effective package.json is still going to be based on resolving that spec and getting that manifest and kind of merging it into the current one.
But wouldn't you have the dev dependency and the parent identifier in your local dev environment? And if you ran npm update, you would need to specify, you would need a means to specify whether you would want to update the parent or the dev dependency.
Well, we haven't really contemplated any way to update the parent, right? So it's not saying here's a dependency that I have and my parent is this dependency. It's saying my parent is this package specifier. It could be a dependency or dev dependency or nothing. And it would be basically no different than having like, you know, a package that doesn't have a parent that depends on that package, right? So the way I would approach it is like, we'll talk about a way to, you know, update the parent that you depend on, but for the time being, we'll just say, if you want to change the parent spec that you depend on, you open up your editor and you open package.json and you go edit it. And at publish time, or at pack time, more specifically, we will sort of flatten that package.json. And otherwise, every time you run an npm command, we have to load that parent specifier. So, you know, that does impose some developer experience challenges if the specifier is a remote spec, right? So if my parent package is like foo at 123, well, I have to touch the registry every time I do anything. Like just to run npm ls, now I have to hit the registry. There's some ways we can make that a little better. Like obviously it's going to be cached and so on. We could even like prefer offline when we make that particular request. But I think the expectation, if I do that, if my parent package is a remote package, the expectation would be I update the remote and my local package changes like right away.
So kind of what you're saying is, and maybe I got this completely wrong last time, or I just missed it, that I would specify my parent basically just like this. Any version or anything, and then like npm would just like go look inside the node modules folder.
No, I'm saying the opposite of that. I'm saying you would say parent TypeScript at 1.x.
Okay.
If you did just parent TypeScript, well, that's going to get TypeScript at latest because that's how it works if you run npm install TypeScript. That might be the version in package. That might be the version that's in your dependencies list, or it might be a completely different version, and it's completely orthogonal.
I'm not sure how. So okay, so I have it at a specific. I just basically give it a sem version range, like I could with any other dependency as well, right? and it would result npm
Yes.
pack. Right. Then if I develop the package locally in like, I don't know, a workspace environment or whatever. Oh, okay.
So you could also, you know, a package specifier can be a name at version. It can be a name at file : some relative path or absolute path. It can be a Git repo, anything that you can pass to npm install.
Yeah.
Sorry, we use the term specifier a lot as kind of a technical term internal in the CLI. I realize it's not, I was not defining that.
So if you have a def dependency now for TypeScript and you run npm update, or npm outdated is even better. You would get output that said that maybe TypeScript is outdated as a parent.
No.
And as a def dependency, or you would just leave like the parent out of there completely, because otherwise it would just bloat.
Well, what would happen is when we resolve the parent package, right? When we read the package JSON to find out what your deps are in the first place, we would load that parent package. We would apply all the changes to that object, and we would throw away the parent field. Yeah. So at the point where we're actually checking your outdated deps, like we don't even really know what your parent was. We don't care. It's already been resolved.
Yeah, but like if I develop it locally, I wouldn't run npm pack, right? Or am I just missing something completely here? I mean, it would only be run, like npm pack would only be run if I publish it, but if I locally develop my package and I wanted to run, I don't know, npm test, and npm test is maybe defined in my parent, I couldn't do that, right?
You could. What would happen is when we read the package JSON, we would then see that there's a parent field. We would load the parent manifest. We would apply those inheritances, and we'd return the resulting manifest from the read JSON call.
Okay.
So your test, so when npm says, give me the local package JSON, it'll get the one that's fully resolved. There might be some indicator or some hidden field that says we got this from a parent, you know, just for our own tracking purposes, but for most of the code base, it would just kind of be oblivious.
Okay.
That's actually the easiest way to do it, and probably the one that is the least surprising.
Yes.
I do feel like there's a bunch of quite a bit of like UX and technical challenges that need to be combed through for this, and so I'm not quite ready to ratify it, but you know, and also the just the performance impacts of doing what would be kind of the most expected thing. So that's why it's sort of been on the back burner while we finish up V7.
I'm not taking offense. So
okay,
I definitely do see it's a big thing, and I mean, like I kind of rewrote the entire thing once already, which kind of goes to show that it's not that easy. So I wouldn't be offended if it took.
Just to clarify one thing that I was thinking, during pack, do we update package JSON?
Yeah, so the important thing is when we don't currently, right? Currently we just put the package JSON, we just pass it to tar and let it do its thing. In order to implement this safely, we would have to read the package JSON and then kind of re-encode it for the file that goes in the package tarball if there's a parent field.
Right. My one consideration is when we're not publishing, but you're storing into like version control, like lock files. like, and
Right.
this reference actually is local and it's not within the same repository, right? Like that's the
So
concern
I would
for like
I would say
developer experiences, right?
so what goes in, yeah, I would say what goes in the lock file gets really pretty interesting. That is a nut that has to kind of be cracked there, because we want to be able to just read the lock file and have that be like a correct package tree. However, the lock file probably shouldn't have the fully resolved package metadata, right? Like if the parent updates and you run npm ls again, or you run npm install again, like we need the lock file to get updated with the new package metadata. So it's not that that's a blocker per se, and I would hesitate to say exactly how we should do it before kind of getting a little bit more in the weeds with the implementation. But
that's just one thing that
yeah,
I was thinking of in terms of edges of this thing. Like that's the one thing
that's
that
one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, like the developer experience for something that maybe I can't resolve, like team sharing packages that now extend parents that like I don't have on my system. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
And
that
if
would
the
break
lock
when you
file
run.
is-
Yeah, that would break without a lock file. Like the goal of a lock file is that it should always be just whatever works with a lock file will mostly work without one, and just by looking at what's actually there. And it should also not cause you to get different data if there's a lock file versus if there's a fully resolved node modules.
But there's the potential that like if a lock file is checked in and it's fully resolved, then I would ignore the parent field, right?
No, so if you have a parent field, and let's say that parent added a new script or a new dependency or something, and since I last ran npm install, and so I check in my log file, then the parent updates, and then I run npm install again. What it should do is, again, it should resolve the root package JSON against the parent. It should see, oh, well, I have this tree here, but there's a bunch of invalid things, some missing deps or extraneous deps, and fix them, and otherwise follow what the log file says.
So that would always fail then if I didn't have if the parent ref wasn't available or accessible.
Oh, anything will, like if you declare a parent and that parent is a package specifier that we can't fetch, like you're hosed, buddy. Like we cannot, I can't load your deps, right? Like you're getting your deps from the parent package. So
Yeah.
I can't read your package JSON. It's as if /package JSON like returned an error when you read it.
So, but in the case of where there's a log file already, what's the log file then doing for your deps?
Well, the log file is specifying the resolved and the tree shape of what we expect to put in node modules. It's not going to save you from a package JSON that can't be loaded properly. Like all of the logic here, like what I'm suggesting is all of the logic around parentage of packages happens at the phase where we load the package.json file.
Okay. And
that's where we resolve it and flatten that manifest and say, okay, this is the data object that we're using for the purposes of this command. The two trickiest things are when I npm install and I update something in that, I'm going to save my dep back. I have to be smart enough to say, I want to save this to the original JSON object and save it back with the parent reference. And not accidentally save the whole flattened one without the parent reference. And when I create the package tarball for publishing or packing, it needs to save the flattened one and not the one that has the parent reference. So
well, there's a few more wrinkles than that, right? Like one of them is when I do npm install -- save, which one do I want to save it to?
Well, you can't save it to the parent. It's not here.
When I'm in the, like if I'm inside the child one and I'm developing,
yeah,
the parent is there, right? Like that's where it would be read from. in order to smush it together. So like,
I mean, if it's a file reference, yeah, but it's for the purposes of the npm command, it's just some package specifier. It could be a name at version. It could be a URL of a tarball.
Oh no, I'm
literally
sorry.
anything.
I'm not talking about the thing I'm installing. I'm talking about the package JSON that's going to get updated when I install some dependency. Is it the current one or the parent one?
Yes.
And what if I want it to be the parent one?
I understood. If you want it to be the parent one, you go to the parent project and you install it there.
Okay. Then the other question is
the parent can't be modified by running a command in the child, because the
so that makes sense.
The parent could be right. The parent could be like GitHub:/Isaac/foobar, like.
Okay.
And you can't update that locally.
If the parent is a relative file path that traverses up out of the directory, and I have the current one symlinked, is that also like, how do you do all the correct real pathy things to make that work as expected? And what if someone expects it to go up from the symlinks directory and not from the originals directory?
So if the parent is, so what I would do is, I mean, it's actually pretty simple. Like, we fetch the parent by calling pacoche.manifest and passing in that specifier. And that will go find it wherever that specifier points, whether that's a name at version, whether it's a URL, tarball, you know.
Right, but if it's file : /
yeah,
dot
if it's file : / dot blah blah blah,
Yeah.
pacoche.manifest will see that file : it'll go in that folder, it'll read that package JSON, and it will return me a manifest object. But for the purposes of npm, like from a relative path from the package that's doing the file offset. So whether it's a symlink or real path or anything doesn't actually matter. What's going to matter is, because it's not loading all of that thing's depths, it's not doing a full tree read, it's just loading the package JSON. It's just loading the manifest.
Okay.
So for the purposes of this, like, whatever that specifier is, it's somewhere else. Whether it happens to be a folder on my machine, like maybe it's a folder I don't have permission to read, or maybe it's a folder I just shouldn't be reading or writing in, or sorry, maybe it's a folder I don't have permission to write to, or at the very least, from the purposes of running this particular install, it's sort of outside of my domain. And so modifying repo A when you're working in repo B is extremely bad behavior. That's spooky action at a distance.
I agree.
One thing, if I may add, so the whole thing seems clear to me now, with one assumption that the parent's exact specification, which version of the package it is also going to have to be saved in package lock. Otherwise, deduplication might do weird things, or the package log might get outdated or confused. I don't see how it would work otherwise. And at the same time, I would personally be surprised if package log didn't lock the parent as well.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, maybe the thing we do is the package lock actually includes a parent field which has the specifier, which has the manifest that we fetched to resolve against package JSON, and we check there first. And then if it's missing, then we do the Pacoche lookup. I think that's completely reasonable.
Yeah, I see one has his hand raised.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
We're almost at time here.
Yeah, we're almost at time, so I don't even know if we want to go into it. But I was going to say, have we tackled the circular parent problem yet, too? Because that would be if you're referencing something, and it goes through a chain, and somehow in the end that circulates back to your the package you're working on. We need to prevent that in some way, I would assume.
Yes, we will have to prevent that. You're right. It's pretty easy to prevent, though. We'll just keep a list of all the resolve values, and if we get back to one we've already seen, we just go, okay, we're done.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, we're at time here, so I think we're gonna have to end the discussion for now. But yeah, maybe it's a good idea to also go back to the RFC and document. I think there's a lot of progress here today. Yeah, so for today. I know there was still 3 items left. I promised last time I'll try to switch the order so that we can go through these first. So ZB, like I think next week we might go with NPM audit first and try to reverse the order.
I'm very
here.
unlikely to be here next week. Sorry.
Okay. So maybe we'll just postpone for the week after.
Yeah.
That. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so,
Darn, because I think we should do a deep dive on that one at some point. But if you're not going to be here next week, then maybe not then. But I think because we had a bunch of discussions also in the package maintenance working group meeting yesterday, which I think would be valuable to rehab with you involved. And so
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
I can try to join some meeting, but next week it's going to be even worse than now. I'm trying to work and get the life afloat after we've lost a babysitter, so it's not easy on time.
I know these feels. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining, everybody.
yeah. Thank you. See you next week.
See you
Bye.
next week.
bye everyone.